Okay, folks, we're going to get back together as a big group. Let's start with East Side. Again, questions or comments? Everything's good. By the way, you were overly polite with not asking any questions in the throughout that whole thing. So you can stop. It's okay. But better here, so I appreciate it tremendously. But if something's burning, it's okay. And I hope it's a question. Anyway. Okay, here we go. East Side coming at you. Questions or comments? Let's get one from this table. Oh my. No, Karen wasn't. No? Well, here's another. Let's add a wrinkle to the social contract. If you make the mistake of looking at me or you go to hand you the microphone, you're like, I lost it. All you have to do is point to somebody in your neighborhood, okay? And then you'll probably have to buy them a drink tonight. So it's totally okay. We're just expending the contract. Okay. So here we go. Karen, would you like?
Sure.
Okay, what do you got?
We didn't have any questions, but we were talking about how we'd be interested in hearing what you have to say about the really severe kids that don't even want to walk in your door, and you can't let them stay at home. And even if your door means you do whatever you want all day long, and they still kick your butt for 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
You know. So what you
Good.
have to say about that, especially when you have contingencies of like the parents having to be at work for a certain amount of time and all of that stuff.
Sometimes the relationship with some learners is somewhat so broken, it's hard to reestablish the relationship where they want to be, where you need them to be for therapeutic outcome. And so we are going to talk a lot about that in the process. The very first part of our process, obviously you probably know this is just an interview. We're going to learn a lot about the child. When it's at that point where the child doesn't want to be there and still you're trying to give them everything and you're not trying to instruct them, but yet there's still a lot of problem behavior, we're going to work through how to set up a new location, maybe with a new person, probably with the same person, because I really want to teach that person your relationship can be great. Give us an hour. I want to prove that. But we'll usually do a new location. We're going to reconstruct that space, and we're going to work on what we now call happy, relaxed, and engaged. And we are not going to put an EO in to see if we can see, when problem behavior occurs and all that stuff. That is way down the road. What we're going to do first is just figure out, can we get happy, relaxed, and engaged reliably? And sometimes that takes 5 minutes. A learner like you're thinking about, that might take 2 hours, 2 separate sessions. It's well worth the time. And so we will talk tomorrow through a lot of that because that is terribly important. When those relationships are, we want to get that child back. And I'm not worried. I'm fairly confident we can get it back. The interview will help us figure out. A lot of times it's just the interactions. Let me be clear. A lot of times just standing near a learner that has these trust issues, and I'm going to speak like a non-behavior analyst sometimes, they have trust issues right now. Just standing above them is going to trigger problem behavior or keep them escalated. The simple tactic of getting what we call low and loose, this tactic of being low and loose is very counterintuitive for someone who has severe problem behavior, who's historically hurt people. But to take the heat out of the situation sometimes requires getting low and loose and basically giving them a signal that you are not going to dominate them, interrupt them, restrict them, redirect them, restrain them. So we're going to combine a lot of these tactics, get the heat out of the situation, rebuild trust before we ever go in and disappoint them and trigger behavior and worry about all that function stuff. So I appreciate the question and the challenge. I'm not worried about it. We'll tomorrow hopefully keep that learner in mind and let's move through the process. Great. Yes?
So if we have, a 2-year-old and we, in a perfect world, provide ABA to a 2-year-old effectively, will we ever have a 15-year-old with problem behavior?
I mean, we have to be humble here. We don't have long-term studies, so I have to make it very clear. I believe in this process, okay? But we don't have the follow-up studies. Now, I have colleagues doing the follow-up studies, Dr. Jessica Slayton, Dr. Robin Landa. They're doing these nice follow-up studies in fact, they're doing with older learners. We need more research. But that said, can a child who's 2 years old, who just started developing these behaviors, we call them at that point emerging problem behavior. When the problem behavior is emerging, can we, with our existing technology and all the unique neurochemistry of kids with autism, can we hope for a day where there's zero severe problem behavior? The answer is yes. It's not just yes, it's hell yes. We need to, if we don't have that hope, parents and the people we're training will not either. We need to teach families that problem behavior is an accident of learning. It is not inevitable. There are so many kids who had emerging problem behavior that did not have it anymore because they were in one of your great EIBI programs and you kind of taught through it. That is real. And there are kids with very severe problem behavior that I know personally who do not have a smidge of severe problem behavior any longer. Now, do they have problem behavior? Do they whine? Do they tisk, stomp their feet sometimes? Yes. That's not what I'm saying. Everyone needs that. I'm talking about self-injury, where they're hurting themselves, aggression where they're hurting others, property destruction where they're destroying property. Those three behaviors, those are accidents of learning. They're extreme responses to threat and confusion, and we can eliminate those. Okay, let's go to Central Park. Central Park is so open and airy, so nice. Let's go to the south, Central Park South. What do you got?
Вот это убери, пожалуйста, унеси себе туда.
Should be variable. Do you have an ideal amount of time you would spend in a rapport building phase before you start and enter the severe?
Yeah, good. So again, in case you didn't hear the question, we do talk a lot about rapport building in our field right now. I love it. I thank Bridget Taylor, Linda LeBlanc, and who was the third author on that paper that started this conversation about rapport. It's a really nice paper. If you haven't read it yet, I think it's in Behavior Analysis and Practice. And so rapport building is being discussed right now, and I think it's fantastic, okay? Second, the real question, though, is how much time do you spend in that? I think when I say rapport building, a lot of people are thinking about pairing, that procedure where you kind of hang out with the kid, you do reinforcing things to make sure you're a valued person to that child. And I don't love pairing because usually it doesn't teach me what you're doing when you say pairing, okay, because it's kind of non-technological at this point, but in general, I get the gist of pairing. What we're going to talk about in this process is something very similar to pairing, although I'm going to drill down to its core components and its details. How long we do it is really up to the child's behavior. We call what we do now in analysis a performance-based analysis. The child teaches us how long to do anything. So it's going to be a little confusing when I start showing some graphs because I don't aggregate data into 5-minute sessions anymore. I know in research when we publish it, that's still out there, but as time goes on, I'll give you a foreshadow, our graphs are going to look like second by second, always, because all decisions are based on child performance. To speak more broadly, how long do you do what we used to call the control session? How long do you do a test session? It's up to the child's performance. How long do we build rapport? We'll have criteria. I need to see 0 problem behavior of any type, severe or minor, for 5 consecutive minutes while the child is happy, relaxed, and engaged. And if there's a relationship issue in the past, I'm going to triple that. So we have these little rules of thumb that we'll use, but the quick answer is it's on the par of minutes, not weeks. And then we do disappoint. We withdraw from the relationship when we present the evocative event, etc. But the relationship stays intact because we're going to engineer it so the child's effective. So the start of our relationship is happy, relaxed, engaged. But the rest of our relationship is predicated on them being a highly effective person with you. And we can make those withdrawals by disappointing and asking them to do work and all that. And we can do that because they can effectively manage all those troublesome situations. So I hope that answered your question. Generally 5 minutes. The performance will dictate longer. History in the interview will dictate maybe a little longer. And then we're going to get to it. But it is on the par of minutes, not days, not hours, not days, certainly not weeks. Okay, thanks, Central Park. You're not Central Park. I can't read from that. Colton? Yeah. Colton, thank you, Colton. Okay, West Side, question or a comment? So we have hands, so that's even easier. Good. You don't have to buy anyone a drink. Okay.
I have a research question. Do you have or know of any randomized controlled trials about these methods, and or do you know of anything coming down the pipeline.
Good. So the question is, are there any randomized control trials, RCTs, on this procedure? Let me be very clear. I am a proponent of RCTs. When I was the editor at JABA, my first editor's note was, we need RCTs in the field. I published RCTs on the preschool life skills program. That's a prevention program that teaches the same skills we're going to talk about today, but we taught them to inner city kids who are at risk for school failure. It's the same skills, and you need an RCT to show prevention. You can't do prevention in single subject design. You need a control group to show that their problem behavior did develop and the test group it did not. The closest thing we have to it are those studies on preschool life skills, in the sense that it's the same skills being taught that we're going to talk about, but it is far removed from the population that we're all focused on. That is usually kids on the spectrum with severe problem behavior. There are no RCTs. Now, please know there are no RCTs for your alternative functional assessment procedures that I'm aware of either. We need RCTs in the field. I'm not sure I want to do them, I'll be frank. I've been in academics for a long time. I gave them back my salary and said, I'm doing something different right now, because that was a little too slow and the grind was done. I was done. I'm a research professor, but I'm mainly trying to disseminate. I hope some of my colleagues do some RCTs, and I think when I slow back down, I think I'll try to put this in an RCT. We need them. I mean, the only reason we're gathered today as behavior analysts is because Lovas did an RCT and Catherine Maurice wrote a great book. There's a lot of other factors, but those are probably the two most prominent. So we do need RCTs for things to matter to people at like US Surgeon General, CDC. It's a beautiful question. If you're a researcher, take the prompt. Take the prompt, Emily.
I'm not a researcher. I'm the same as you, but I
Okay.
think we should have them.
We should have them, I agree. Other thought or question?
Yes, I'm curious who you advise to get into the chair when you're actually applying this. So in more of a clinical setting, would you advise it be the RBT, the
Good.
DC, or the overseas
Good.
BCA?
Yeah, so this is a tactical question, but let's tackle it. Who should implement the analysis, yes?
Yeah.
That's the question, okay. The question of who to implement the analysis is answered with a few factors to be considered. The main factor is who's going to be available to do the most teaching hours. That's who I want doing the analysis. So it's about, we're building a relationship, building trust, right, all that, and then we're going to shape some skills. So that person, I want who does the analysis to be there for most, if not all, of the teaching sessions until we transfer the effects of treatment. So that's really number one. But the other part is, I want someone who knows the child, especially if they don't have language. If the child doesn't have language and they communicate in kind of unique, quirky ways, I need someone in that room that knows the child. No more like the stranger comes in and does the analysis. We generally don't do that. We just coach and collaborate. The other factor is, and we're going to get silly later, I need this person to be fast. Person who does the analysis cannot be slow and a cool cucumber. They can't all be like, they have problem behavior. They're like, oh, don't do that, you know. Let's get silly, because you guys are a little too stiff for me right now. Let's get silly. Can you get high off marijuana legally in Virginia yet? No? In DC you can? Okay. Well, in Massachusetts, they passed the law last year. Everybody in Massachusetts is high right now. Just know that. There's a big cloud over the state of Massachusetts. I drive through it every day on the way to work. If you have your windows down, it smells like skunk weed. For those of us who do not partake, it is really amazing how intense the smells are in my state right now. I worry about people doing this in Massachusetts, given that everyone's high, they're going to be a little too slow to do the analysis. You know, the kid's going to engage in a precursor, they're going to miss it because they're going to be like, whoa. I need people dialed into the child. Whoom. I dialed in. Hyper responsive. Fast movement. That's the other part. Good knees. If you're far away, you didn't hear them cracking, but good knees. So who should do this? This is not in order of importance. Good knees. Not likely to be stoned. Not likely to be just a slow, cool, cucumber, California cool type person. And someone who's going to do the teaching. Now, the coolness will be nice in treatment. They can come back later. Who is hyper amongst your group? I want the hyper person. Who is like really dialed in and who can read the child? Like, I know right now he's about to do X because they know that child and they know the grimaces and all that. That's who we want. to really do the analysis. Who wants to do it? Who's excited to do it? I want that person doing the analysis, okay? When we go on implementation days, we say to the company, give us your learners with the most severe problem behavior, the most expensive learners, the learners where their potential's here, but they're living here. Give us 3, and we collaboratively implement. And when people ask me who should implement, I often ask, who knows this child the best and who wants the best for this child? Who is their advocate? They're kind of like a pain. They're a pain in the ass because they're always advocating for this child. That's who I want to do the process. I want someone who loves this kid, who knows this kid, who has a little speed to them so they can teach effectively. That's really the best. Okay. Let's go one more question at Central Park, and then we'll move on.
So to follow up on that, then, if you're teaching in a clinic setting where you have a new child coming in that you haven't met, would you wait to do this until you get to know the kid, or?
Thank you. It's such a good question. If you are in a clinic and you don't have staff that have histories with children, I would still do this process from the very beginning. I simply would make sure my interview was pretty thorough, so I did know what a communicative bid looked like, what a social bid looked like, their comfort level around people, and all that kind of stuff. So I just have to be a little more careful in the interview. The other thing that I want to mention, we'll repeat it later and emphasize it, is I recommend you don't do any analyses without the parents there. I'm about full transparency, and I'm also about disseminating good ABA, and I want people to see it. I want the parents there. But that's not really why I want the parents there. That's a side note. I want the parents there because I want them to see through the camera, not in the room usually, if the child can part with them, but they're usually watching it through a camera lens. I want them to see whether the child's happy, relaxed, and engaged. I want to ask them, is that happy, relaxed, and engaged? Because we don't have a good definition for happy, relaxed, and engaged. And I'm not going to hurt myself trying to find one that's global, because that makes no sense, because there's a personalized process. I just need someone who knows the child there so I can go, how are they doing? And they say, oh, he looks a little anxious, he looks a little upset. They can use whatever words they want. Very good. We're going to stay in the HRE phase. We're going to stay there because they're not there yet. And then the mom says, oh my God, I've never seen him happier. He's so relaxed. Oh my God, he's so happy. Good. Now I'm ready to put an EO in. So it's okay in a clinic to not have that history, but you need to have, not need, but I would strongly recommend you have someone there with the history. Could even be a teacher, right? Someone who knows the child for a long time. That's your ace in the hole here with this process. Okay. Yes, sure, East Side, because you're so posh, you're probably politically connected, so yes, we'll let you break the rules. It is a quickie. Yes, definitely. How they'll become available, we'll figure out over the break and we'll let you know. But normally what we do is we just email them out to you after this event, and the email list is usually obtainable through this process of getting you here. So yeah, you'll definitely get them. Right now you have the workbooks, yes? Okay, but we'll get those things. Let's take a minute to go through the workbooks. Let's do a quick logistical thing. So please pull out, there's 2 workbooks. One's called Practical Functional Assessment, and the other one's called Skill-Based Treatment. Pull out the first one, please, PFA, or Practical Functional Assessment. So you have the PFA workbook out, I hope. Can someone show it to me? Thank you, sir. Please notice on the very front, there's a legend. So I use acronyms a lot, and I apologize if you're not a behavior analyst. Even if you are, you might be turned off by some acronyms. So please, the acronyms are on the front page. Definitions of some things are on the front page, so I don't want people taking notes. It's all written out. You'll notice that I want to go through this packet. The second page are tips on how to do the interview. The third page is the interview. Please know that there's a free website. It's called practicalfunctionalassessment.com. These materials are posted on the website. These interview forms are translated in multiple languages if you just want to hand it to a parent that speaks a language different than you, and they can simply fill it out without being interviewed. Okay, let's move forward. What is a PFA? A PFA is an open-ended interview, and it's an analysis. The analysis is called an ISCA. I apologize every time I say the word. It's an acronym, ISCA. We generally don't go around talking about ISCAs. We go around talking about PFAs because it describes the whole process. The whole process is called a practical functional assessment. It has 2 parts, the interview and the analysis. The analysis is called an ISCA because at the time, we were trying to distinguish it from other analyses out there. It's brief, but that was taken. It's this, but the words were taken. So it's II is interview informed. And what that really implies is that you would never do an analysis unless you personalized it from an interview. An interview is a very highly efficient way to tap the history of parents and teachers. In a half hour, you can get a whole lot of information, and it frees us from the labor of having to follow kids around with clipboards, waiting for the shoe to drop, and then hoping we can learn something from that. Descriptive assessment is a big tool in our toolbox, but I'd like to leave it in the garage when you go take your toolbox on the road. Descriptive assessment is expensive in terms of time, and time is money. It's expensive in that it tricks us. Just because something's prevalent in the classroom doesn't mean it's relevant to the maintenance of behavior. All kids' problem behavior gets attention from somebody. So to mark down that attention follows behavior is largely irrelevant. It doesn't mean that it's related to the behavior. So the interview allows us to get a whole lot of information quickly and efficiently. And then there's the interview informed is the II. Then there's the SC part, that's synthesized contingency. That just means we're going to test multiple reinforcers at once because we're trying to emulate the ecology in which they learn the behavior. And last, it is an analysis, meaning there is a test control spirit to the method. Let's get to a client. First client I'll talk to you about today is a little boy named, fake name is Brandon. Brandon's 3 years old. He does not have any particular diagnosis, but he does have behavior severe enough that he has been removed from all possible daycares and child cares that the mom sent him to. The mom is a functional single parent, so this is a very big deal that he can go to child care so she can have a job. We worked with this child in a clinic in Springfield, Massachusetts. For 12 years, we ran a free clinic for kids with severe problem behavior. There was no funding, no funds taken from families, schools, or anybody. It's because it was a training program. So the university paid the bills, and folks in our program signed up for the class, if you will, and they worked in the clinic. We often worked with kids that didn't have diagnoses because they were kids who fell through the cracks because they didn't have the right diagnosis to get services. This little boy, Brandon's one of these kids. An informal part of our training program was you don't go out consulting in group homes with 250-pound men until you can do this process with 50-pound kids in the clinic with a lot of eyes on you. So we kind of have a developmental trajectory where we kind of work in safe conditions with a lot of support before we go out and take this on the road. So this is from that training model. Understand that in the interview, we have 3 missions. What are the problem behaviors? What are the triggers? What are the EOs? What are the reinforcers? We want to be efficient. We don't want this to be a 90-minute interview. This is not a developmental assessment. I strongly recommend you don't connect it to any other intake forms or any other developmental assessments. Do it on its own so you can be focused and the family or teachers can be focused with you. It really only takes 15 to 20 minutes to extract the information you need to then go design an analysis. Please know you're doing the interview to design an analysis, not to determine the function of behavior. Okay, you're getting a hint, you're getting hunches, hypotheses, but you're gonna test all those in the analysis. The analysis reveals the truth, if you will. The truth will never be revealed in an interview. It can't be if you're a scientist. So the interview allows us to get qualitatively rich information, cobble it together, and then go put it into a space where we're gonna do an analysis with the mission being to turn on and off behavior. Please know the interview will never take only 15 to 20 minutes because of our priorities. Not that it would be safe if we would do it fast, but we might mess up rapport. So if a parent really wants to talk to me about the abuse suffered by their child in that inpatient facility where they were over-medicated, they went through 10 trials of electroconvulsive therapy, they were restrained and abused, and they need to tell me that because they're still losing sleep over that experience, then I'm gonna listen to that because I'm worried about rapport. But do I need to know that to do the process? I do not. My assumption is all kids that I'm working with and collaborating with have trauma histories. It's a universal assumption. I do trauma-informed ABA with all the kids because I simply assume, I don't need to know about their trauma. If people want to tell me about it, I'm going to be a good listener. I'm just going to assume they all have a trauma history. And as they get older, that comes closer to reality. So in the interview, we're going to be good listeners. We're going to build rapport, but we're going to be mindful of our mission. What are the behaviors? What are the EOs? And what are the reinforcers? Now, there might be some people in the room that are not familiar with EOs, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I need to make sure you're on board with this because it's the only technical term other than reinforcement. So I'm going to tell a silly story to make sure we're all on the same page. When my kids were very little, I liked to hug on them. I'm a physical guy. I like to get physical with them. And I like kiss on their neck, and I noticed when I would kiss on their neck, because I would kind of lick them a little bit, I noticed that they tasted different. And if you don't taste your children, you should, because it's kind of interesting. So my daughter was very salty, like a Bavarian pretzel. And my son, by contrast, was a little musky. And a little, he had that musk scent to him. And so I think probably because I was kissing on him and licking on him a little much, they kind of kept their distance in the mornings. If I came down in jeans and a t-shirt, they paid me no mind. But if I came down with a sports coat on, they would come close. They would now pray. And if I came down with a roller bag, they'd be up in my lap, talking to me about their day, telling me about what they were going to do, asking me about what I had going on. Those are establishing operations. The coat, the roller bag, what they do is they make my attention valuable by signaling it won't be available for 10 hours or more, and thus evokes behavior that in the past has gotten my attention. So an EO is an environmental event that potentiates or makes reinforcers valuable and evokes behavior to access those reinforcers. What we're doing in this mission is trying to figure out what the EOs are. And you have to play detective.
Сделай
A roller bag is a strange EO, yes? A sports coat, that's an evocative event. If you fancy, they're conditioned EOs. Most of the good ones are learned. It's not just deprivation. They haven't had Skittles in a while. That simple stuff has been solved by the parents and teachers. They wouldn't have complained to you. The EOs are funky. And so we need to ask some questions about those funky EOs. Let's talk about the responses. The responses, the first thing is, what's the most dangerous behavior? What are we talking about here? And then the trick is asking questions about all the behaviors that precede, cluster, or orbit around that behavior. You don't need to use the word precursors. It doesn't matter if they precede the severe problem behavior necessarily. What matters is that they co-occur in time and place. They co-occur in the situation. What we're looking for is hints that they're members of the same response class, okay? Okay. Take a look. For this little boy, these were his problem behaviors. Is this autism? No. Do kids with autism do these things? Yes. Please know that if you don't work with kids without autism, it would be good to do so if you get a chance, because you'll learn that a lot of the things kids with autism are doing is what kids do. Okay, so this was a child, 3 or so years old, engaging these behaviors. These are the EOs. On the break, when you come back, I want you to check the EO list and look for the funky ones, because there's some funky ones in here. The reinforcers are always boring, in the sense that, in a categorical sense, it's escape from, to access this, with some attention, and man compliance. This is usually quite common. The details here, that's where there's usually some uniqueness put in play. So what we'll do now, I want you to take the break, come back, really study that EO list. When you come back, I'll show you videos from the analysis. See you then. Okay, who found the strange EO? Central Park, yes. I'll repeat it.
Brandon just wants to live his life in this place.
Oh, okay, you're just taking the global interpretation like I do. Your interpretation is Brandon just wants to live his life. Guess what? Every kid with severe problem behavior does too. I think you're totally right, miss. So I'm glad you picked up. But tell me the specific one on here, though, that seems to stand out as a little odd. There you go. Being instructed to play differently, for me, is a common one. But playing quietly on his iPad is quite unique. So let's take them both. Playing differently is what it's like to be autistic, being told to play differently. Please know, your field with autism, there was discrete trial training, a low-VOS approach. And then a lot of people branched off from the low-VOS approach and created incidental teaching, Hart and Risley, pivotal response training, milieu-based teaching, the naturalistic language paradigm. They're all versions of discrete trials that are naturalized. And they all start with have the child get engaged, follow their lead a little bit, and then insert or create your teaching opportunity. And they're great. Sometimes, however, all those teaching procedures run amok in that when a child is playing, they never know when someone's going to pop their autistic bubble with a learning trial. And so I want you to take that perspective of a child with autism when they kind of have a little bit of a negative reaction, an avoidant reaction to the embedded teaching. It's often is giving us a signal that we're teaching maybe a little too often, our trials might be a little too frequent, or that recognize the simple fact that every time you prompt the child when they're playing, if they're truly playing and engaged, every prompt is a timeout from play. And if you want to learn more about that, there's a study by Nicole Heel. In fact, 2 studies by Nicole Heel, I was a co-author, where we showed that embedded prompting functioned as punishment. So in other words, every time a child picked up a new toy, that was our rule for when to put a prompt in. What color is that? What sound does that make? And the children in the study stopped picking up the toys. They would come in and play with one toy only, never relinquishing it. Yeah. So, playing differently is the unfortunate lifestyle of kids with autism sometimes. So it's fairly common. He doesn't have autism, but it's common for a lot of kids. But that notion to play, sit quietly on the iPad, that was quite unique because that's usually a reinforcer for kids. They just want to play quietly on their iPad. The deal with this child, which underscores why we do interviews, he loved his mom's iPhone because when he had her iPhone, she placed him in her lap to protect her iPhone. But the iPad was a babysitter. That was, I have to clean, I have to make a phone call, go play quietly on your iPad. And he'd immediately tantrum is what mom's report was. Again, the importance of an interview, personalizing the process, getting down to those details. There's a fundamental, functional difference between an iPhone and an iPad. Who knew? No one would unless you do the interview. Okay, let's look at it. So this is Dittu. Adityan Rajaraman is the analyst. He's now a professor at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, so he's in your neighborhood. He's a new professor down there. The mom is against the wall, and obviously the little boy's there. Notice that you can kind of detect there's 2 distinct areas. When we get to the tactics, it's terribly important to make it clear where the reinforcement space is for a learner versus where the EOs are going to happen. In other words, this area down here with all the toys, the floor, is a common place for 3-year-olds where it's the reinforcement space. By contrast, the EOs happen up at a table. This is what we used to call the table of drudgery. But now we call it, because I work with very positive people like Anthony Camilleri, the most positive man I've ever met on the planet. We now call it the table of high expectations. That's what this is. Notice what's there. The iPad. Toys to clean up. That's what this signals. So I'm going to say a lot of things repeatedly that deserve repeating. If I look at a snapshot or a video of an analysis and I can't tell whether the child's in reinforcement or in the EO, I'm concerned. Because if I don't know, the child doesn't know. And safety can be found in the clarity with which we design that environment and implement the contingencies. So I'm starting out with this notion, take a snapshot. Where's the reinforcement space? Where's the table of high or the area of high expectations? Is it likely the child can know that? If they have sensory impairments, what else did you do to make it painfully obvious that this is Awesomeville and this is Suckville? You have to teach them there's a difference. We're trying to take the world that's shades of gray, intermittent and unpredictable schedules, unclear stimuli, and we're trying to bring it all into a world and make it black and white, clear as a bell, that it's all good over here and this is the tough stuff. Okay. You'll notice the mom's in the room. The mom goes where the child wants her to go. Most little kids don't want to separate from their mother. In a clinic, would we ever recommend you separate children from their parents if there's any sign of duress? The answer is no. Definitely not. Just have mom go in the room. Sometimes parents do the analysis and we coach them, although that's pretty rare. Most of the time, the parents participate in the reinforcement interval because their love is like no one else's love. And so we want them in the reinforcement interval. And that's what she's doing. Notice the synthesized contingency here is called escape to tangibles, attention, and man compliance. When we first started publishing these, some people who aren't quite understanding it or not into it were like, well, how could you deliver all those at once? Some of those are opposites. How could you manage all that? Reviewers would constantly say, that must be so cumbersome. Cumbersome was the word I kept getting when people were reviewing it. So I want you to take a look and see just how not cumbersome it is. It looks like good babysitting. I also want to make it really clear that this is not easy to do. And so that's why I'm really happy we get a day tomorrow to role play and do these things. In our typical approach, we go out and do this collaboratively with people because it takes some shaping. There's always integrity breaches in the beginning. So let's just make that clear. When we role play tomorrow, some of you poor souls, I'm going to ask to come up and do it live and in front of people. And again, that social contract still exists. You're going to make mistakes because this is not intuitive necessarily. But when you practice it and you do it 3 times, you'll be the master at it. It'll be a thoughtless, automatic sort of thing. It might seem easy to deliver escape continuously the whole time, right? Oh, that's easy, right? Just don't give them demands. That's easy. I want you to think about all the ways we can mess up giving them continuous access to escape from the moment they enter. So let's do this. East side, how are we going to screw this up? Just yell it out, I'll repeat it. Continuous talking. If we give the impression that we need to have a conversation with some learners, that is a social demand that will evoke problem behavior. Our mission in the first step of the process is to create a context in which the probability of problem behavior is 0. Sometimes merely talking to kids is enough to evoke problem behavior. Sometimes even something as simple as, hi, my name's Dr. Hanley, what's your name? Boom. West side, how are we going to screw this up? Asking questions. Oh, is that your favorite toy? Buzz. No. Good. Central Park, how are we going to mess this up? Yeah. We get all up and close up into their grill. They're playing and we're like this. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. This is a little tight. Are you uncomfortable right now? Yes, exactly. Good. Proximity issues. We're going to talk a lot about proximity and body positioning. It's terribly important. We need to learn from other psychologists. There is evolutionary psychology that matters to this process, and it's not just the topography of behaviors that tend to hang together. East side, west side, how else are we going to mess this up?
Eye contact.
Yeah, drill them with eye contact. Respect eye contact, okay? East side, how are we going to mess this up?
Like lock them into a space.
Yeah, keep them in their space. Let me elaborate on that, and then I'll answer your question, miss. That was it. Okay, very good. We do right now, you're not going to see it, the door's closed. This video is taken from 4 years ago. We do what we call now, all the time, all learners, language, no language, high risk, low risk. We do what we call an open door analysis. We do not close doors unless the child wants the door closed, and they will close it themselves if they want the door closed. We do an open door analysis. I do not want the child to feel like a caged animal in the functional analysis. Now, this is going to seem very risky. I am saying I'm leaving the door open. You have to say, well, what about elopement? What about it? Leave the door open. The cool thing about open door analysis, not only does it de-escalate kids, it gives us great data. Because what we're going to do is from the interview, we're going to figure out all their reinforcers and we're going to put them into that room. We're going to make it look beautiful. It's great data if they go into that room and go, yeah, not so much, and they leave. That's a preference assessment. You don't have to go like this. Pick one to call it a preference assessment. That's a preference assessment. If they're willing to attack people and bang their head against the wall for those events, and we put those events in the room, they should want to stay in that room. So if they like fans, should we give them a little cheap fan from Walgreens? They're really into fans. Fans is their thing. Should we give them like a little fan? No, you give them a bunch of fans. You go into the CEO's office and you get the box fan. You get the tall fan from the basement office that has no air conditioning. You put 7 fans in that room. When that child enters the room, you want to blow their mind. You enter the room going, what? What? Who is responsible for this awesomeness? That's the impression you want to give. They should want to be
Слава,
nowhere
открывайте
else
двери.
than in your analysis. Open the door. Take that little risk to open the door and they will teach you. Some kids will do some great things. They'll leave the room and they'll go collect other reinforcers. They'll steal from another kid's cubby and then they'll bring it back to the room. They'll go back to home base. I've had some kids, 6'5" boy, hop like a bunny down to the staff office. Make some popcorn. No one knew he could use the microwave. Hop like a bunny back. Did he go back to the analysis room? He didn't. He went to the OT room and sat on a swing. And where did we do the analysis? In the OT room. We follow the child's lead. They will teach us where they are most comfortable. They will teach us where the places they will get happy, relaxed, and engaged in the quickest. Remember, we are championing safety. Safety is number 1. Number 2 is televisability. Number 3, rapport. Open door analysis is highly consistent with those values. And I know it seems risky, and you are going to have to take some risk. Tony and I last week were in a place where the child left the analysis, and everyone gets nervous. We got a little GoPro camera, the parents in the room. He goes outside, and he's walking outside in perfect, and I like basketball, so I see his white socks, and I like white socks. I don't like socks black on the thing. Like nice white socks, bleach the heck out of those things. He's walking around these beautiful white socks in muddy snow. It's killing me. He was doing that because he saw his parents' truck in the parking lot, and that's unique. He thought maybe they were in the building, or maybe he was going to go home, and they weren't in his analysis. So he went to check out what was going on, and then he walked right back in the analysis, and then we get to work. Now, consider the alternative. Close the door. Make him stay in that room. What's going to happen next? He's going to escalate. You're going to have to restrain him. You're going to have to hold the door down. It's not going to be televisable. It's not going to be safe, and you just ruin rapport. One tactic, open the door or close the door. You can have all those priorities or you can crush all those priorities. Open door analysis for me is the most important thing we accidentally discovered by kids teaching us how wrong we were by closing the door. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Tell me what you mean by that.
Puddles, rain puddles
Good.
versus a sunny day.
Very good. The EO being rain puddle, often the rain puddle is a reinforcer, so let me just go down that path for a minute. We often start analyses outside. I don't know what it is with the Italian kids. We consult with a lot of Italian BCBAs. Most ISCs start outside around a drain hole. There's all water play around. There's a lot of drain holes apparently in Italy, and there's a lot of play around drain holes. So that's where it starts. Now, what I try to do is say, hey, Italian BCBAs, why don't we emulate a drain hole with like a bucket of water, and we'll do a little water play like we do in America. Let's keep this all clean and tidy. And they're like, okay, we'll try that. And the kid's like, no thanks, and they go outside. Okay, so please know that's common with Italian children, apparently. Please know, though, that leaving the analysis space that we construct for them based on an interview is not common. Most kids just stay right in the room. I'd say 9 out of 10. But 1 out of 10, I'm loving that door's open because they're teaching us that something's missing from that room. Now let's go to yours. Yours, the EO is rain, let's say. And rain is a conditioned EO. Maybe he's disappointed. They won't be able to do something. I don't know. I'm just going to do the interview and figure out what it is. If a child gets perturbed by rain, I am confident that they get perturbed by other things. So when we talk about how to construct an analysis, there's going to be convenient things to emulate and inconvenient things to emulate. Emulating rain is a great example of something inconvenient. I'm not doing shower-based analyses. Do you know what I'm saying? So you have to be a pragmatist. You really got to drill deep in that interview and figure out, okay, that'll be a generality context. We'll deal with the rain later. We'll deal with Mother Nature later. Instead, let's emulate another troublesome situation. Please know that it's skill development. We just need a context to develop the skills, and then we're going to program for their generality. If we teach the skills where the child's passion is burning the brightest, generality is going to be easy. Generality goes downhill from where they're most evocative. If we can't get the most evocative we teach here, we know we're going to have to do a little bit more effortful transfer process. That's all. Okay, very good. Okay, we talked about escape. No choices, no questions. We don't even say hello. Seems so rude. We follow the child's lead. If they come up to me and say, "Hi, my name's Greg," then we say, "Excellent, my name's Greg too." Weird, okay? We follow the child's lead. When we give attention, this is what we do not do. We're gonna give them continuous attention. "Hi, Luda, how are you? Oh, wow, what a nice day. It's so warm here. Here it's gonna get cold tomorrow. Luda," that sounds like a rapper, like Luda. And I'm just gonna talk and I'm gonna say all sorts of strange things. Attention doesn't mean you vomit words on a child. If you find yourselves vomiting words on a child, check that. This is what attention looks like in analyses we do. I'm gonna give you a wild amount of attention right now. It's gonna blow you away. This is it. Don't do anything else. Don't talk to anybody. Be completely available to the child and match their level of social intensity. If she smiles at me, I smile back. If she reaches towards me, I go towards her. If she gives me one of these, tick, 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 I'm gonna tickle her. When kids come in a room, I don't go, "Yeah, you're here, tickle, tickle, tickle." That's some weird stuff, but I see it. I see it all the time. You were worried, weren't you? You thought I was going to go there. You were playing along. You're very kind. Attention to us is about being wildly available and wildly responsive. I want you locked and loaded on that child, and if they look at you, please respond. If a child's stimming, you're the analyst, you're the implementer, and the child's stimming, they're doing one of these things, and then they go like this. What do? We say, "Look at you. Look at you go." Every time they give us a social bid, a social reference, some joint initiation, we respond. What are we doing? We're trying to teach them that they are in charge. We're trying to teach them that their behavior has power. We're trying to bring them in. Okay? So attention. Just zip it. Get low. Get available. Don't freak them out. Follow their lead. If you get low like this and they kind of go, be responsive. No worries. Respond, get it right. You'll see them getting happy, relaxed, and engaged once they moved you in the right position. Okay? Okay. How do you deliver man compliance? Just do whatever they ask you to do within reason. Okay, here's the video of what we used to call the control condition. We still call it that. It's just all reinforcement. We just call this the reinforcement.
Oh no, he bite me out. It's a scary snake, man, and a scary beetle. There it is! Where'd it go? Where is it? Oh, there it is. I thought we lost that red car.
Please know that a child, this can be fun, but the child dictates the fun. So please know, we knew from the interview you love to play hide and seek. It doesn't mean we go into the room and Ditu takes his toy and says, "Where is it?" Right? Instead, Ditu waits, and the boy, he's wildly available, and the boy goes, "Where is it?" And then Ditu starts playing the game. We know he likes his snake toys and whatnot. We're not trying to inspire him. He plays with the snake toy, he bites his mom's knee with the snake, and then mom acts like a normal person. "Oh, wow, the snake bit me," and then they laugh. But you understand that it's always following the child's lead. Okay, that's the critical part here. Okay. Anyone have any questions on this reinforcement session? Yes, miss. Yes.
Rocking or flipping, that kind of stuff. What are your feelings on us engaging in mirror movements?
It's a great question. Very good. She's talking about children who have more emerging skills. They engage in stereotypic behavior. They're more into movement. Say something like this. And the question is, what is my impression of mirroring that? And I know in certain teaching models that's recommended. I personally do not mirror the behavior, but I am responsive and accepting of it. Do you see what I mean? So when a child's doing this, I don't recommend get up and do that. What I recommend instead is if they're doing it on their own, you let it be. And if they're doing it on their own and they check in with you to see if you're going to karate chop their hands to quiet them down or shush them, you know what I mean? And they look at you, understand when a child looks at you who's engaging in STEM, this is by and large what I think they're saying. This is all Let me take a side note. You notice I do a lot of interpretation, a lot of constructs. Some of you may be wildly uncomfortable with that. And I respect that. Please know I know how to talk like a scientist. I'm pretty good at it. I know how to think like a scientist. But I also feel I'm not just doing this so other people can understand what we're talking about. That's not the game. Interpretation is behavior analysis. And you have to interpret well beyond the behavior code you have, SIB, aggression, and play. You have to look at kids. You have to try to understand them. You have to take perspective. If you're not willing to take the child's perspective, you're not going to be a good clinician or practitioner. You have to understand the child and you have to think along with them. And if you're not willing to play this game of interpretation and say things like, oh, he looks a little anxious. Wow, he looks joyous right now. He's pumped. He's stoked. I worry. It can't just be if then. If then. It's not enough. Okay, so I'm not just doing interpretation so we can be approachable by other professionals. I'm doing interpretation because I rely on it every day, trying to help understand why kids are doing what they're doing. Let's go back to this. I don't recommend you mirror. What I recommend is you're available. When most kids with stereotypy look at you, here's what they're communicating. Are you going to stop me? Are you going to restrict me? You think this is bad? Is this bad? That's, I think, what they're asking. And if you spend time when they check in with you, you just give a smile like, look at you go. I don't know why, but that's my catchphrase with the kids when they're engaged in stereotypy. It does make me a little uncomfortable because a few years ago, if they did that, I would have karate chopped them. I call that blocking, okay? But instead of karate chopping them right now, they're engaging in STEM and I'm just like, look at you go. There he is.